Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream, all you lovely wargamers out there. And boom, just like that, you're in our show. You're in the Alliance Open Judges Call. That's the show where we invite tournament organizers and just ninja chop them in the face with hard-hitting journalism and tough to answer questions about the art of organizing tournaments. My name is Stefan. I am your host, and I am here with Daniel, my co-host from Team Firebug. Say something, Daniel. There you go. There you go. There he is. All right. Now, before we introduce our very exciting guest, now people watching will probably have already seen it on screen. We would like to say hi, everybody. We're the Alliance Open. We're a Dutch organization that does our very best to bring you premier wargaming tournament events in Europe. We're talking great tournaments, lots of people, great venues, great food, and just all-around great experiences. And we would love for you to just take a look at our Alliance Armory, where you can find tickets, you can buy merchandise, and also lots of great terrain that we make. So that is that. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a great show as far as I'm concerned. We've got a great guest. Now, Daniel, you don't know who's our guest yet, right?
I have absolutely no clue. I don't see anything on screen.
That's right. So I'm so excited. I thought we'd play it in the form of a little game. I'm going to introduce our guest in the form of a Jeopardy question. And if you can answer the question right, well, you'll win something special. Are you game?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So today's guest, here we go. This guest today is one of the most known TOs in our glorious wargaming community. He kept the hobby momentum going while creating the ITC last year and is part of the organization of the largest singles event worldwide called the Las Vegas Open. Who is our guest?
You're kidding me, right?
No,
I'm not. Who's Reece Robins?
You are absolutely correct. Reece Robins is the correct answer. You win an interview with the man for 2 hours long. And as luck would have it, we have him on the line right now. Reece Robins, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we are super stoked that you're here. Like we said, we've got some hard-hitting journalism for you. I hope you're ready.
Oh, always.
All right, great. So we've got some great topics actually about tournament organization, and what better than to ask one of the biggest tournament organizers such as yourself. But before I hand you over into the very capable hands of Master Interrogator Daniel over here, who will ask those questions, I always like to also ask a few questions to learn about the person behind the tournament organizer, because very often when you're a person that, like a well-known person such as yourself, you get like this personality, but there's also always a person behind there. So I always start off the stream with what I consider to be the most important question, and that is, Reece, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Can't complain. Things are definitely starting to look up here on stateside. Everyone's getting their vaccines. I've already got my first shot. Most of the staff here is getting vaccinated. So things are good here. Finally, right? Like, it looks like the light at the end of the tunnel can be seen.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that you are doing well. I also heard that you lost a lot of weight. Is that true?
Yeah, well, first of all, I put on a lot of weight during COVID, like a lot of people did. And then I have lost, since I took it seriously, which basically like the fall of last year, I've lost 23 pounds. So
okay, well,
feeling good.
Great. Well, balance must be maintained, of course. Right. So I wanted to know, you're a big person now, but we all start small, right? And so where in this grand adventure that you're now on, did you begin? Where did you first fall in love with wargaming?
Well, that goes way, way, way back to the 80s. I started playing like D&D and BattleTech around the same time when I was a little kid. So that has been my first kind of introduction into tabletop gaming. And then I discovered Warhammer in the early 90s. I went to go visit family in England, and my cousins took me to a Games Workshop store, and I basically love at first sight. Mm-hmm. And I've been playing pretty much ever since. I stopped playing in college. I was just too busy, and then I started playing again right after college, and haven't stopped since.
Well, that's pretty much, I think, the story of a lot of people. And yeah, that's great to hear, man. So you've been doing it for a long, long time, and you've come a long way. So that's really great to hear. So, but what is your favorite army? Like, what was the favorite army you started with? And also, what's your favorite miniature?
My favorite army is Astra Militarum, and well, I have, I don't know, 13 armies or something like that. But that's my favorite. It was my second army, was Catachan's, still my favorite. And my favorite mini is probably either the Vulture gunship or the Forge World Avatar. Probably my favorite.
Okay, I remember the Forge with Oven. It's not a model you see a whole lot, though. That's the one holding the spear, right?
Just sword or spear. I have the one with the spear, but yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite models.
That's actually a great model. I think it's way better than the normal, the regular Avatar. So
Oh yeah, there's no question. Yeah.
yeah, that's great, man. All right, so now you know, you're a well-known person, but if you think about Frontline Gaming, you also you think about Frankie Giampapa, because you two are a duo, and he has been with you for a very long time. So I was just curious, how did you guys meet?
Yeah. So Frankie, as you know, we've been partners since the beginning. We met when I moved up to Northern California from Southern California. For people not from the United States, California is gigantic, and going from the bottom to the top is like going from one country in Europe to another, basically. Um, so when I moved up there, I was looking for people to play 40K with. Went on Daka Daka, and I was just asking around, and one of our mutual friends told me about their club, which was Team Zero Comp. And so I went, met up with the guys, and we all got along really well. Started going to tournaments together. I joined their team, and we decided to run a competitive 40K tournament because there were barely any in the country at that time, and there were none in Northern California. So we decided to run an event. It was the Bay Area Open, and that was over 10 years ago. And that is what started our professional relationship, because running an event is a business venture, and we worked really well together as a team. And we decided to do it full time and open up a game store, which was Frontline Gaming,
Mm-hmm.
and that is how it all began.
Yeah, yeah. You know, talking about that store, um, you know, I've got a bit of confession though. I'm just gonna say it. I don't mind saying I've been a big fan of you guys for the longest of times, and actually, my favorite time was from back in the day. Where you guys were still making those like bootleg battle reports in the store, and I distinctly remember still the sound of the bus thundering by every 15 minutes. So to me, that's like the golden age where it all began. Like you had lots of people, and starting like these battle reports and stuff. But I loved you guys as well. So do you ever miss those days, being like small, so to say, right? Because once you grow really big, I feel like sometimes that seems to take control of it. Like you're on the ride, but the only thing you can do is watch and not really do anything. So do you ever miss that? Being in the golden age, the beginning, so to say.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. The beginning was really hard. We started the company was like $12,000, which is like is nothing. Like starting a business with that little amount of money is insane. And if anybody else said they were going to do it, I would tell them not to. That'd be my first piece of advice. You're just gonna throw the money away. So we started the business with no money. We didn't know what we were doing. We had pretty much no connections. Um, so it was quite the adventure. And the only way we were able to do it is because Frankie didn't take any money from the company for the first 2 years. He was working two jobs.
Yeah.
And I moved into Jason, the Salty Banana. He was my co-host on Signals for a while.
Yeah.
I moved into his living room for a year, and I basically only ate rice and beans, for a year. So yeah, I mean, I literally I lived on like $1,000 a month for a year. I think it was like insane.
Yeah.
And So there's a lot of pride in the fact that we were able to build a company that now has 15 employees and, from nothing. But it was really, really difficult. I didn't have a day off for the first 60 days. And I was working at least 12 hours a day. Frankie was working 2 jobs.
Mm.
So he would go to work at 4:30 in the morning, and then he would put in a shift with UPS, and then he would come work at Frontline. And
Yeah.
we did that for 2 years,
Yeah.
right? And so it was really, really, really difficult. We didn't have a life. Um, I had a girlfriend at the time. We broke up because I was never there. So
Yeah.
it was fun. It was an adventure, but the price that we paid was really high.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of good times, like the old store was a lot more relaxed,
Mhm.
and we got to see some little kids turn into adults
Yeah.
that hung out at the store and formed some really strong friendships. But um, would I go back? No. Am I proud of it? Yes.
Would you do?
Yes.
I guess then the $1 million question is: would you do it again?
I mean, knowing where you end up, yeah, of course, I would pay I
Yeah.
would make the sacrifice again. But you don't know that
No.
at the time, and it's like every single month
No.
you're down to your last dollar. And it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it was very difficult, and I wouldn't recommend anybody attempt to start a business like that. Like, you
Yeah.
have to be desperate.
Yeah.
Because Frankie and I were a part of a business that had failed right before that,
Okay.
and I was kind of like at the end of my rope.
Really.
I was,
Really.
yeah. I mean, I had 12 grand, and that's what we started the company with. I was like, YOLO. Let's see
Yeah.
how this goes.
This really sounds like a hero story, like a movie. Or you at the end of your rope, you had to put all of it in there, and then at the end you succeed, right? So that's actually an incredible story. I didn't know it was actually that hard to start, although that is a story you hear a lot about, starting businesses. But then you and Frankie just stuck to it, I suppose. So what I really want to know is then what is like the dynamic between you two that made Frontline Gaming so successful?
So yeah, we both got really lucky that we have such a good business partner, because this was my 5th business venture, Frontline Gaming. The first 2 had failed, and then 2 were non-scalable. So they worked, but they would never get me where I wanted to be. So when we started this one, I'd already done it a few times, and we had a talk, and Frankie was only 20, right?
Yeah.
When we started the company, I was 29.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're getting married, right? Like, becoming business partners is like getting married. There's going to be times when we don't like each other. There's going to be times when we do like each other.
Yeah.
There's going to be ups and downs, but as long as we're committed to the goal and we communicate well with each other and we show each other respect, we'll navigate the ups and the downs that is going to come along with this. And
Yes.
Frankie's a really easygoing person. He works really, really hard.
Mm.
He's dedicated, and he's not an argumentative person.
Okay.
Like, we get in fights from time to time, but he's a really easy person to work with. So we got really lucky that our personalities complement each other well, and that it's like whenever we have conflict, we always like take a day to cool off.
Yeah.
And then we talk about it, and you have to just respect the other person's point of view, even if you don't agree with it. Much like being in a marriage.
That is a very true statement. So what would you say, like, if we're talking about people starting up and they have a difficulty, like you were having great difficulty, what would be the one thing where you would say, do this, or perhaps never do this? Like, what would be your greatest piece of advice to those people?
Yeah, so one of my friends who's a much better entrepreneur than myself, and who taught me much of what I know,
Mm-hmm.
And he said it in a way that I often tell other people, is think about how much money you believe you'll need to start the company, double it, and that's how much it will actually cost.
Yes.
Think about how much time it will take to become profitable, double it, and that's how long it will actually take. Think
Yes.
about how much money you believe you'll make, cut it in half. That's how much money you'll actually make. And if you're still prepared to see it through, knowing that, then you're ready to do it.
I see. So that's a pretty good piece of advice right there, because I think a lot of people prepare, but what you're actually saying is prepare for pretty much the worst case scenario all the time. And Yeah, and if you're in, then you'll have like a more realistic picture of what it's going to be like. And if you're still willing, then go ahead and do it.
Yeah, because you're never going to be prepared for, unless you're a very experienced business person, you're never going to be prepared for all the technical stuff, like how to file for a corporation and getting your tax. Like, you're going to learn all of that as you go, right? No one's
Yes.
ever going to know all that before you do it. You just have to accept that. What you really have control over is your attitude and your emotional state.
Yes.
So you want to prepare, like you want to put your armor on to in advance, because all my friends or people, my associates that have failed, that has been why they have failed.
Yes.
They've hit that point at which it becomes extremely difficult
Yeah.
and frustrating, and they just say, screw it, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But if you're mentally and emotionally prepared to push through those points,
Yeah.
you're going to be fine.
And I also guess, I suppose it's not for everyone, I suppose, as well. So, yeah.
It's not, people think it's really, on the outside looking in, it looks very like, I don't know,
Yeah.
romantic or glamorous,
Yeah.
but the reality is that you make, as an entrepreneur, you make less and work more hours for the first
Yeah.
like really, really long period of time. And then if it's successful, then it can pay off in a really big way. But there's years and years and years and years of grinding
Yeah.
before you get to that point. And you have to ask yourself, is that worth it?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. It is big. It is a big thing, and yeah. But at the end, though, like you said, all the outside people ever see pretty much is like the romantic part of it. Like I just said, right? I love the time when you were making those battle reports. Like, I was having a ball, but then probably back in the store, you're like stressing out to the maximum about all kinds of different stuff and wondering if you'll ever get some sleep again.
Yeah, that's exactly it. No,
Yeah.
it is fun, right? Like we remember those times fondly, but it was extremely difficult. You know, you work 12, 16 hours a day, go home, sleep on a couch,
Yeah.
and you do that 6, 7 days a week for years, making almost no money, right? Like, that part wasn't very fun.
Yeah. No, not really. So we've got crew. Oh, sorry, Daniel, you've got a question.
Just interrupt you really quick. So, what's the most favorite throwback moment? What's the moment you think of when you're like in the situation where you think, okay, oh crap, I want to throw everything to the ground and don't want to continue? So, what's your go-to moment?
Yeah, there's a couple times we almost went out of business when we were really close, like, to becoming insolvent. And I remember there was one time when we pulled off like this financial game of cups miracle to, like, basically took like through, gaming the system, being a gamer, finding a rules loophole. We were able to basically get enough money to keep us afloat, and it was through sheer just cleverness, that we basically created capital out of nothing by just doing all this bizarre Byzantine like financial maneuvering. That felt pretty good because it was basically creating something from nothing.
That sounds hilarious. So basically, what you're saying is the last 10 years have been one big Christmas miracle, really.
Not always, but like the way it works is that when you, like, revenue steadily should hopefully be steadily increasing,
Yeah.
but it's at a pretty moderate rate. And then when you increase overhead, it's in a big chunk, right? So then you'll go to a point where you're burning negative until revenue hits a point where you exceed your overhead, and then you're profitable again.
Yeah.
So in that period of time, even though you plan for it, it's still very stressful because your bank account's going down. And if you don't time it right or something happens and then you're short, well, you have to come up with capital to fill the gap to then take the next steps. And so when it's kind of cruising in a predictable fashion, it's not very stressful. But when then you come to those crisis points, it's extraordinarily stressful. And the longer you go, the more that is at stake, the more stressful it becomes.
True.
But then you can't grow if you don't take those risks. So it's just a part of the way the whole thing works.
That's very true. That's very true. So now, fast forward years, and we're in a weird predicament where we can't really get out of our houses that much as we would like. We can't go to tournaments as much as you would like. But luckily, there's the internet, and luckily there's like programs for you to play the games online. Now, there's a lot of opinions about that. People hate it. People love it. But it's a very divided community in that situation. And I was just wondering what you think of the recent uprise of online tournaments. And there has been recently a tournament where that has been very popular, where basically it was actually between armies, not so much as between players. So that was a very popular TTS tournament with a lot of famous contestants. So do you think there is a future in the online tournament gaming, or do you think it will go away once the status quo that we know sort of returns and we're able to go to actual events again?
That's a complicated question. So my thoughts on it, strictly from a user perspective, is that I think things like Tabletop Simulator or whatever, what's the other one called? I always forget. It doesn't matter. In any of the platforms like that, I think from the perspective of someone that's stuck in their home during COVID, to give them something to do and to socialize, from that perspective, I think it's great, right? It's good for people's mental and emotional health.
Yeah.
They can play, socialize. I think that's wonderful, right? From a business perspective, I don't think there's any hope that this goes anywhere, because it's basically infringing on another company's IP.
Yeah, true.
I'm 90% certain what they're doing is illegal. I'm pretty sure that the only reason that a company whose IP is being used without permission hasn't
only 90%
smashed it into
sure.
the ground. I would be willing to bet that the only reason that anything hasn't been done yet is that it would look bad during COVID.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. I think they're being a little lenient. But thinking about it, though, it's not like they're going to lose. I don't think they're going to, like, if we were to say, okay, Games Workshop, or rather, online tournament gaming becomes a thing, I don't really think Games Workshop will lose anything on it, except, that the use of the IP is a thing. But even if they were lenient enough to let it go on, I think it would only benefit them. But knowing Games Workshop, they probably won't like it.
Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I couldn't say in that regard. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't speak for Games Workshop by any means. But I do know that at least in the United States, and I'm 99% certain it's the same in the UK, that if anybody uses your IP and you don't legally defend it, you lose your IP. So it's not even a question of, is this good or bad for the community? It's legally, what are we obligated to do?
Okay.
So again, I take anything I'm saying with a grain of salt. I'm not an expert on this.
Yeah, I've got
but
mine.
having spoken to IP or to copyright lawyers and such before, having navigated some of these things before, if you have a copyright or you have a patent, you are legally obligated to defend it or you lose it. So it doesn't really matter any of these other ancillary questions. It just comes down to, like, if a company has someone using their IP without permission,
I see.
If they don't go after it and defend it, they could lose what they have. So it's like,
okay, yeah. So it's not even a question of being lenient. It's it's not even an option. I didn't even know that. So that's actually an interesting mechanic in the law there.
It could be different in Europe, and like I could be saying it incorrectly, but having dealt with it before, that has always been the way it's been explained to me.
Yeah. Oh well, but it is an interesting thought. I was just wondering what your idea was about that. Now, on to the more important question, in my opinion, because I'm an orc player, and I know you're an orc player. I've seen you play orcs lots of times, and I was just wondering, what do you think of the new orc model that's like riding a squig hog?
I love it. I think it looks super cool, and from what I've been told, the beast nagas, like the new orc stuff's has really good rules. It looks awesome, right? Like, I think the model looks really cool.
Yeah.
I always like the snake bite aesthetic.
Oh yeah.
So I think they're great.
Yeah, chat's lighting up, calling wars all over the place. We've got Cruel, by the way, saying hi to you. Not sure if you remember him. He's a tall, skinny Dutch guy who he says he helped you set up tables. He wanted to say hi. And we've got lots of people saying hi to you, by the way. And one is also saying Reece, who is the arch nemesis of Tau galaxy-wide. So
Yes, it's my life's mission to just see that faction removed from the game.
yeah, stupid Tau. So so beast snaggers, but they don't. You're saying like they're going to be a like the snake bites. I'm not quite sure they are going to be the snake bites though, because they seem to they like the little teaser. Video seems to say that they're pretty much in every clan. Like they mentioned that, like in every clan we're the strongest. So it might actually be that they're not really so much a snake bite. It's more like just units you can use, but they're more beast orientated. But it's very.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That was what I meant. They are not actually snake bites specifically, but they are kind of old school.
Yeah.
They're like old school non-techie orcs. That was like the snake bites. So yeah. Good distinction.
Yeah, I caught you there, didn't I? Yeah.
You did.
Ninja chop. All right, there we go. I told you, hard journalism, man. I told you. Okay, so before I hand you off to interrogator Daniel over here, I've got some rapid fire questions for you if you're ready. So just off the top of your head, first thing that comes to mind. Ready?
Got it.
Here we go. They're not scary questions, I promise. So, best game of Warhammer 40k you ever played?
The best game of 40k I ever played was the last game to qualify for the Adepticon finals. I was playing against Dark Eldar player. He was beating me. I had to kill his warlord that was on a objective. It was a Archon 2-up save. Shot him, hit him. This was when you could insta-kill him with a strength 6 weapon. It was my last gun. He rolls a 1 on the save, dies. I go to the finals. I'll never forget that. Yeah.
That's excellent. Amazing. That's excellent. Worst rule Games Workshop ever made, in your opinion?
6th edition.
Yeah. The whole thing.
That's a flat answer.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree. Shame on you, Games Workshop, but we love you. Don't sue us. All right, favorite non-Games Workshop game?
That would have to be kind of a mix between Pathfinder and D&D.
I see. All right. So what's your character in D&D?
I usually play a monk.
All right. Is his name Recio?
No, it's Shao Kahn.
Shao Kahn.
Always.
Shao Kahn the Malevolent.
Mortal
Kombat. Does he do the cartwheel kick thingy?
Yeah, it's too much Dragon Ball Z in my youth.
All right. Favorite drink?
I love coffee, and then alcoholic beverages. I love bourbon.
Bourbon, eh? You're a fancy man. All right. Death to the false emperor or death to the heretic?
Death to the heretic.
Loyalist all the way, huh? All right. That was it. You got through the rapid fire questions. See, I told you they weren't that scary. You survived. You've got everything. All your limbs are still attached, right?
Indeed.
Right. So I'm going to hand you off to Daniel. Let's get into the meat of the program, which is talking about event organization. So Daniel, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, Stefan, thanks for warming up. So, Reece, I hope you're still up for some questions, some talk. As promised, about 2 years ago when I was at the LVO, when we made our little interview there, I'm back and we're continuing the interview. So hopefully you like it so far.
Yeah.
So you already mentioned the BAO, that the event that started everything. I would like to jump to the point right now. You just increased the number of events to over 14, I think, or up to 14 over the entire US until 2022. And you installed a tournament manager, Kicker. Tell us a little bit more about Kicker's role.
Yeah, so we hired Kicker to come in and be the events manager. Basically, he's going to be taking over for what largely I did in that regard previously, but then he's also taking on the responsibilities of several other people. Basically, we had 3 people that were responsible for running events, but each doing like a part of it. He's going to be taking over doing all of those roles, but being focused only on that so that he can give it his full attention instead of us trying to do 20 things at once, including running the events. So that's what he's come on to do. We're up to 8 events currently, and the goal is by the end of 2022 to have 10 events per year.
Yeah, so I think you just launched, or it's ending pretty much, the Frontline Gaming Events Pass. Just to promote that a little bit here, I think it's up. Is it still ongoing, or is it done already? I don't know.
Yeah, we just finished it.
Okay, so that's like a benefit you get when you buy the pass. You get a discount on the events.
Yeah, so the way it worked is that you bought the pass, and it was roughly 23% off of the 40K championship or any 40K event ticket price for 3 different events through the end of 2022, and it got you early registration. So we did it because really we were just getting our butts kicked by not having any events
Yeah.
for a year. That's a
Mm.
big part of of our business model.
Mm.
So we were like, we need to generate some revenue. Let's do this. It's a benefit to the customer. They save money, get early registration, and basically it's a win for everybody. And you can pick any event from now until the end of 2022, which will be at a minimum 14 events to choose from, including the LVO.
So you're already thinking about like launching a similar pass next year for up to 2023 or 2024, or is that a model
I
you will continue?
think we will. Like it was popular, and it's nice for the customer too because you don't have to worry about missing out on the event. Like the events will sell out really quickly. You don't have to worry about it. Um, so I think we'll probably do it again in the future. It was a success for the first attempt at it, and it's a nice benefit to our customers that go to a lot of events.
Okay, that's good to hear. So let's get a little bit more into the organization itself. How do you deal with the like on-site logistic management? Even like looking at all the events spread over the US right now, and you're located in Vegas. How do you deal with that? What's the approach for that?
Yeah, that was the biggest question mark that we had to resolve before we could take a show on the road. So we already have we've run more events than probably any other TOs uh, ever in the world, I would imagine. And when I say that, I mean like GT plus sized events that are a destination event. Um, we've run as many as 5 in a year already. So we're really used to like handling the logistics of getting the people, personnel, material to where it needs to be. But it's different when we would drive the trucks ourselves. What we used to do is we'd rent giant trucks and we would drive them. When you're going across the country, when you're going, 3,000 miles, that's a different story. So we had to figure out how to um, cost effectively and reliably get large amounts of material from one point to another. And luckily, with our team, we have a lot of experience coordinating trucking and shipping and all these sorts of things. And we did find a way to cost effectively transport an entire convention's worth of materials from A to B. But it takes a lot of logistical hoop jumping to make it work because you need to transport it from one point to another. Maybe it stays there, maybe it doesn't, maybe it goes to a temporary warehouse somewhere else. And then from there it goes to the next event. Maybe it comes back to Vegas. It takes a lot of planning to pull it off.
So you're pretty much even creating more terrain than you already have to manage to pull off all these events.
Yeah. It's thankfully because we have so much terrain for the LVO, which is the biggest event in the world. Um, like we have enough to cover every event, except for the LVO. If it grows, then we have to make more. So from that point of view, it's not so bad because we Frankie came up with a system to put. We made custom pallets that hold mats, and then on top of it goes all the terrain, and they're very secure. So when we load up for an event, we just load these custom pallets into the truck, and we know how many tables each pallet covers. So we grab as many of those as we need for the event to cover all the tables, and we just ship them from one point to another.
That's a nice logistical trick.
It took a lot of work, but now that
A
it's
lot of
set up,
engineering.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so you already mentioned the LVO. So looking at the LVO, you have like tons of different events and even like smaller like workshops and all that stuff. How do you get your staff together to run all these events, because they are not all run by Frontline Gaming members?
So yeah, that is another logistic.
sorry for hitting the hard
We
points.
don't call him
You
the
have to jump in,
interrogator for
because we spend a lot
nothing.
of this time coordinating. Oh no, hey, I imagine these are the kind of questions that people are curious to
Yeah.
to learn about.
Yeah.
I was in the military for 13 years, so I'm used to that.
Yeah, so you have the skill set necessary to
Yes.
do these kinds of things, and it's a very specific skill set, and Kicker spends a lot of his time developing relationships with people that are local to the area that we are going to be running an event, and then we have people there that will come and be a part of the event, have ownership in the event, perhaps not fiscally, but in terms of mentality, and they will help us run the event. And then, in exchange, as the events grow, we take care of them so that it's there's no burden, no financial burden for them. And in fact, it ends up being, as the events get bigger, they get some really cool compensation. So we try to establish mutually amicable relationships with people so that we can have a long-term relationship, and that they can help be boots on the ground in a local situation to help coordinate, run, and promote. In exchange, we take care of them. They have an emotional stake in the event. It's partly theirs, and it's a good relationship for all parties.
So pretty much looking at the management perspective, you try to do that like from the bottom up perspective to raise everything from a small and then let the people grow.
Yeah. So, and then like we tell people, as the events that they're in charge of get bigger, so does their um, perks for them. Like for example, the judges at the LVO 40K event stayed in suites, got free event tickets. They got to go see shows for free.
Mm.
All kinds of really cool, fun stuff like that. So we try to scale that up so that the people that are working hard gets really cool benefits for their effort.
So you just mentioned the judges from the LVO. I know there are some discussions going on online, especially on Facebook. Someone brought up, I think it was Val Heffelfinger who brought up the question or the status of a code of conduct backup, and I think also Neil Kerr joined in. Do you think that there is a necessity for like organizing the judges more and make more like a common sense for judges, how to judge, even like a school judge or a workshop or something?
Yeah, that's something that we're working towards. It requires a lot of resources to do that effectively. We have the guidelines all in place. We've already structured the whole system, but in order to make it work, it requires money, and we just haven't been there yet to fund it. So it is something that we want to do. It is something that we plan on doing, to have um, like judges that have gone through some sort of training, so that they can be, official judges, and then we have consistency between events, and these kinds of things. They've been trained on how to use the code of conduct, et cetera. But again, all these things take money, and you have to keep building the system in order to generate the funds to justify the expense.
So I already asked this question 2 years ago, so I'm gonna ask it again. Is there, especially on this part with the judging and the workshops and all that stuff, or like the training, is there any sense of going into cooperation with GW, or do you take that totally apart from that?
Um, we do obviously work with Games Workshop, and there is a degree of cooperation, but they have different necessities and limitations due to the nature of their company that can make it difficult to coordinate on certain things like this.
Mm.
So I'm not certain that they would ever be involved in like an official judging program. Perhaps they could. I'm not sure that that's something that they would be a part of, at least not anytime soon. But I could be wrong. But we're working under the assumption that anything like that would be something that we were um, organizing.
So okay, yeah. I don't see that either. It's like, and they are like cut in between two chairs. Even some people there, like some of the bigger names in the company, might have the interest to do that, but probably it's not working along with the code of conduct of the company.
Yeah, I mean, their goals are different, right? Like, it's not like a game like Magic, where the game is inherently designed to be a competitive game, and it is in the best interest of uh, WotC to have qualified judges, right? Like, there's an
Mm.
incentive for them to do
Yep.
that. 40K is a different, it's a different animal, right? Like, um, I'm not sure that if I was in charge of Games Workshop that I would see things differently. I don't know, but that's not. I don't have the insight to answer that question. I just know that for a company like them and the product that is, where the vast majority of people that use the product do not play the game competitively,
Mm.
investing a lot of time, energy, and money into building that out, I don't know if that would be worthwhile to them.
Yeah.
But who knows, right? Like, that's not a
Yeah, I
question you
agree.
can answer.
Well,
Yeah.
it seems to me though, it's like Games Workshop is a mysterious beast because you've had the longest time where they shut the doors and didn't do anything, and they came out with a statement like, "No, we're not a rules company, we're a miniatures company," and everybody was like, "Well, yeah, you're a miniatures company, but the rules sell the miniatures." And now, luckily, they're coming out and doing actually a great job at communicating again, and so they're kind of like turning around and start cooperating, with tournament organizers again, and it's pretty great. But yeah, they seem to switch on stances for every now and then. So it's a hard beast to comprehend to me personally.
Yeah, it sure is. And previously there was definitely a mentality from the outside looking in that they really didn't think organized play had a lot of value. Right, their actions reflected that.
Yeah,
And then we had the change that occurred with 8th edition, like coming into 8th edition, where there was an engagement with the community. It's like, this is the hashtag new GW.
yeah,
And their stock has exploded
Mhm.
since
Yeah.
that happened. It's like quadrupled. So
Yeah.
hopefully, as a corporation, they look at that and then see that an engagement with the community is in our financial best interest. Therefore, we
yeah,
are legally obligated to do it as a corporation. So hopefully that sticks, right? I mean,
yeah,
from where we're standing, looking at it from the outside, it would seem that it's
yeah,
obvious
yeah.
that those two things correlate.
Yeah. Yeah. Chat's agreeing with us. They're saying, "Oh, Ivory Tower Games Workshop that we do not miss, but all hail the new Games Workshop." So there's a lot of love for that. And then I have to ask this question though for a chat. Shop 98 wants to know: is this the Reece from the past or Reece from the future that we're talking with?
From the future, I guess. I don't know.
All right. Well, there you have it, Choppies.
That's from a really, really funny commercial that Life After the Cover Save guys did.
Okay. Well, there you have your answer, Shep. So.
Okay, well, you already mentioned rules, rule cell minis, Stefan. Thanks for that little bridge you built for me.
You're very welcome.
So, how do you approach for your events, especially for like the LVO? How do you approach like rules deadlines? We all know that there sometimes rules are messed up right when a codex drops. There are some little issues, maybe typos in there. Although I think the game overall is at a pretty healthy state right now. We almost are at a point where we've been like in the middle of 8th edition, I would say. But how do you deal with things like, okay, it's obvious that Vrax's points costs are wrong, or that Space Wolves do not be able to have objective secure by the entire army? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so it's in the old days we would just change the rules, right? Like it was very easy. Everybody would scream at us, but then the game would be a lot more fun to play. So whatever, you deal with it. But the way it works now is that we have an agreement to not have an independent FAQ. For obvious reasons, right? Like Games Workshop does not want a third party telling people how to play their game. I understand that. Makes sense. So we help with the FAQ. And then what we do is before events, if there are really pressing questions that have not been answered in an FAQ, although they've gotten really good about answering these questions relatively quickly in most cases, we have an event-only FAQ that we use to let people know how we're going to rule on events in advance. And we do it so that all the judges understand how to rule on these questions so that they can be consistent. And that is how we answer it now. It's not perfect, but it's the only way we can do things now. So
Yeah, I think it's especially difficult when you know that there's like an FAQ coming, let's say like 2 or 3 days before the event, where you know there will be definitely a rules change or a points change to an army. But talking about this circumstance, how do you approach the list checking? Because that's always the part when the rules change before an event. There could be a lot of mistakes, even if there's just no rules change or just a new rule drop, pretty much. How do you deal with this at the LVO, for example? Because there are like over 1,000 players. How do you check all these lists?
you don't check the list. That's like,
Amen, my brother.
yeah, I mean, first of all, anybody who says that the organizer should check the list is wrong, period, right? Like, it's insane to expect a handful of people to check all these lists and not miss stuff when
Yes.
the individual player can't write their own single list and not make mistakes. So there's a couple of reasons why that's a ridiculous and preposterous idea. One, from a labor perspective, it's impossible, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
it's not even going to happen. Two,
Mm.
then it puts the onus of responsibility on the organizer for an individual having an illegal list, which is
Yes.
bullshit, right? Like, 100% no. Like, you write your list, you get it correct, or you suffer the consequences. That is it. So what we try to do to help people, because it is complicated and people do make mistakes, is that we require people to post their list and then we crowdsource it, right? Hey, everybody, check this out. If you see a mistake, let the person know. We'll give them the chance to fix it. But ultimately, everyone coming to these events is an adult. You are responsible for writing a correct list. And if you don't, that is absolutely your fault. And you are the one that should bear the responsibility for it, period. Right? Like, if you're worried about writing an illegal list, get it done ahead of time and put it up, ask people to critique it, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? But expecting the judges to do this, it's like, what are they gonna? They're gonna wipe your bottom after you go to the bathroom too? Like, come on, you're an adult. Like, do it correctly.
I bet you're not able to count the numbers of discussions you had on this topic.
It infuriates me. People are like, you guys should check the list. I was like, no, you should write the list correctly. And
Yeah.
if you have any concerns that you are incapable of writing a list, then ask for help.
Yeah. So
Right?
so
As,
recently it just happened on the Clutch City GT that in a list that was, I mean, it was not kind of clear because there were definitely two different rules perspectives or rules drops that indicate different rules. I think they managed the situation perfectly, but what's your advice or trick to deal with these situations afterwards, after it's discovered, even like when the event is over?
So
yeah, so we as a rule, we do not go back in time, right? Like, that mistakes are made. I've never seen or been at or run an event that didn't have errors, period, like, ever, right?
true.
So it's we as a rule, we do not wind back the clock, right? Like, whatever the ruling is at the moment, that is what it is. If an individual TO feels pressure that they do need to go back in time, sure, like, that's up to them. But for us, it's like, that ship has sailed, right? Six people played this individual. Nobody saw it. The judges didn't see it. It was a very questionable situation. Um, and again, that's why you want to crowdsource and try and get all this stuff done in advance with the list. But you don't go back in time and punish them. It's like a similar situation that's a little bit less cut and dry. But if someone complains about someone's behavior after the event,
Yeah, it's true.
oh, this person did something, and then they retroactively like kick the person out. That is
Well,
poor
that is
policy.
the trend currently, it seems, of the
It's
world to go back
it
in
is
time.
yeah, it's a terrible idea
Yes.
unless somebody did something egregious, right? Like,
Right.
they physically accosted somebody
Yes.
and that person didn't see anything and they can prove it or whatever.
Yes.
That's a different situation.
Yes.
But if it's like, oh, this person quote unquote cheated in a game, and I'm
Yeah.
just now telling you later, and then they go back and then they kick the person out after the event,
Yes.
that is a terrible, terrible policy, right? Like,
Yeah, definitely.
handle it at the event, and if somebody doesn't spring it up at the event, well,
Yes.
it's good to know, but it's like you can't, without evidence and then after the fact, go and try and blemish somebody's reputation or change the event. That sets a horrible precedent.
It's not like in the NFL where you have like a video assistant and can watch a game from like 5 different angles to see what somebody has done. Has he moved the miniatures? Has he cheated on the list or rolled the dice or whatever? That's not possible. Or you have a
Like,
drone that
yeah, exactly. Like if somebody's
circling.
on camera, right, and they do something truly egregious, like pull someone's model off the table and stick it in their pocket, or
Yeah.
whatever,
No.
right? That's different. That's a different situation. But if it's like some relatively minor thing and someone points it out after the fact, the ship has sailed, right? Like,
I agree.
that's why you need to be there, present at the event, paying
Yeah.
attention, and running the event to try and catch these things.
Yes.
Was this actually a quote from Adam Abramowitz putting somebody in his pocket?
Perhaps.
Ding, 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 you're old.
Yeah, talking about old. I mean, you're already 40. I have like about 20 days left till I'm 40.
Oh, I thought you were going to say to live, but go on. Go on.
Thanks.
That's a bit.
Thanks for that, Stefan. You're the young gun here.
Yes, well.
So, do you think there's a certain age that is required to run an event, to like be an event organizer, a certain experience, to have that skill?
Not really. I mean, we started when we were really young. I was running 40K tournaments when I was in high school. I'm obviously very small with like 4 to 8 people. But to run a larger event where there's actually significant financial risk, like generally speaking, a GT or bigger, any age person could do it. But I think someone that at least understands the fundamentals of bookkeeping and understands administration and these sorts of things, you're probably going to be at least in your 20s. But I guess it just depends on the experience and the maturity of the individual.
Yeah. Just you pretty much you said you didn't had a look at the papers before, but you're pretty much building bridges to the next question. So talking about the pandemic. What was the biggest challenging or the biggest risk organizing an event during the pandemic?
Well, we didn't. We canceled all of our events during the pandemic. So I don't know the answer to that question. We do have one coming up in June, the Atlantic City Open, that looks like, I would say at this point we're 95% go. However, since in the United States the vaccination process is going extremely rapidly now, it looks like every American will have had the opportunity to get a vaccine by May. So I don't think it's going to be as challenging as it would have been trying to run one like last month. So I don't really have a solid answer for that. I would imagine that the biggest challenge would be to try and enforce the rules. As if an attendee shows up and decides they don't want to follow the rules, like that's very difficult. Like you just have to kick them out, and that causes all kinds of problems and such. So
yeah,
that's luckily we had when the Alliance Open, the Alliance Hanseatic Open happened, we had like about 100 players, and we had no violation against any mask rules or like stop infection rules or whatever you call them. Everybody behaved super. They were just super happy to be able to play the game again. So I think luckily we have a large amount of players that are already grown-ups.
I think also culturally that people in your countries are more likely to follow those rules than here.
Okay.
That's specifically Germany though, because I've talked to Daniel before. I've been there at the event, and it really stands out to me how well the German people behave, and that because every single one, I've never seen this before, but at the end of the event, all the attendees, without asking, started cleaning up the terrain, putting them in the boxes that were under the table. We never told them that they were under the table. They just found out by themselves. I was gobsmacked. They were putting them in neatly and then just rolling up the mats, putting them in the things. It was amazing to me. I'd never seen that before.
Yeah.
Big
And then
kudos at that point to the wives of the Target Priority crew.
True.
and that's amazing, right? Like in here, you have somebody like roll up on a horse shooting his 6 shooters into the air, and it's a little different.
Yes.
Okay, so before we leave the tournament organization and go on to like the rules a little bit, I have one question that was submitted pre-show I wanted to bring up. It's also kind of an up-to-date question. So Sebastian is asking, with the rise of 3D printing during the pandemic, what are your thoughts on non-GW models for 40K armies in a competitive event?
Yeah, so this is the elephant in the corner of the room, and it's not only during COVID. It's been steadily advancing for a long period of time. I think during COVID, with people had time to just be at home, I think a lot of people got into it. They were curious about it, but had never taken the time to do it. So it probably sped it up, to the gentleman's point. My thoughts on that are, I've been keeping a really close eye on it. I think it's going to be the MP3 of the record world. There's no stopping it. There is no. It is inevitable, much like Thanos. So
who coincidentally you can print as well.
It's more like, would you just say, okay, rule of cool? If you can definitely say this model is supposed to be like armored or has this weapons, or would you just say, okay, I have to look individually as a judge, as an event organizer, at every model and check out if it's okay to play with? Not talking about like if you want to play on GW stream, because they have their own rules that you have to bring their models, which is totally fine from my side, but talking about like all the other tables, because they're way more.
It's a tough question, right? Like any GW sponsored event, obviously no GW models. They don't want them to be there for very obvious and understandable reasons.
Yes.
But from the player perspective, from the user perspective, there's an obvious huge reason why you would choose to go third-party models or 3D printed. As somebody who like loves miniatures, and I have almost an encyclopedic knowledge of like all miniatures from any company, and I also buy 3D printed models all the time. You're not going to be able to change this behavior, right? Like it's going to become more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
So as an event organizer, I always believe that it's smarter to bend with the wind than to fight the tide. And if you don't have any interest in working with manufacturers, because obviously they're terrified of 3D printing for good reason.
Good reason.
What do you care, right?
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting question, because 3D printing is great for the customer and it's horrible for game stores and it's horrible for manufacturers, right? Like if they don't pivot, it could damage them or put them out of business, right? And then where are we at?
Yep.
Right? Like then is Games Workshop just a book publishing company? Like
it's also,
you know what
it's also just a lot of like speculation, because you don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, look at the record industry, right? Like
Yeah.
that is the closest analog I can think of, right? Like who buys CDs anymore?
True. The only thing I can think of, like how Games Workshop or like stores could bend with the wind, as you say, is probably sell their models as printable, like the files, and maybe increase their prices, because somehow they're going to have to cope with the fact that they lose money due to not being able to sell the plastic, right? So they lose that. So they might sell as files and have people print them and just sell the. But that's also very hard to track. Like, if someone buys the file, then like, how are you going to prevent them from spreading the file all over the internet and everybody getting that file?
That's super doable, right?
Really?
Like that's completely doable, right? Like, if anybody buys like digital like music files, like they've secured those. Like when you go on Steam and buy a video game, you can't just give it to somebody else, right? So what will need to happen is somebody needs to build a marketplace for STL files and then secure them so that somebody who buys the STL file can't then just hand it to somebody else. And then also incentivize all the creators to go through them, right? So this will happen. I don't know who's going to do it. It will happen because it's happened in other industries. And then when you can provide a marketplace for all the STL files and that the creator can sell them through you, make money, and their creation is protected, like I can't just hand the file to somebody else. Problem solved, right? And then you pivot into a digital medium.
Yeah.
I don't know if Games Workshop, I have no idea what they will do in this regard, but I feel like there's no stopping progress.
No.
And this is obviously the way it's going to go.
Yes.
It's just, I don't know how long it's going to take.
They could also like provide a service like their stores would now have 3D printers, so you could maybe buy the model and then a store near you would print the model, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's still more cost effective to do plastic injection molding at scale, like by a mile. It's like it's not even close.
Yeah.
But obviously the MSRP of certain models, it creates a big incentive for the end user to 3D print, because even though it's more expensive on a per unit basis to 3D print, it's a lot cheaper than buying an MSRP kit, right? So inevitably the whole industry is going to change, right? Like, I don't know when, I don't know to what degree, but it's just, there's no stopping it. You can get a photon resin 3D printer for $250 that prints models that are almost as good as like a forgeable model, right? And when they're painted, you cannot tell the difference on the table between that and the real thing. So it's like, you don't have to be a genius to see where this is going.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So Cruel in chat is saying that at least for the moment, the current print quality is nowhere near the level of Games Workshop models. So
that is not true. Well, okay, I guess it depends. If you're talking about like a consumer grade 3D printer, yeah, totally. Right, but the very high end 3D printers, I've seen some of what they make, and it's like when you're talking about like the couple micron level fidelity in the print. You would be shocked. There are 3D printers that print with fidelity that is on par with plastic injection molding, but they are, they cost $100,000 or to $1 million.
That might be a bit above the budget of the average wargamer.
Let's make an expensive hobby more expensive.
right, and that's for prototyping and stuff. Like, it's, obviously you're not going to use it to make a 40K army, or maybe you are. I don't know.
So any final advices for fellow TOs, Reece, that you would give to them for organizing an event?
Me as a person, as an individual, I love third-party models. I think they add to the experience, right? But as somebody that works with GW, like, and our interests are aligned with theirs, like, obviously then we've kind of cut a middle ground, right? Like, at our events, you just can't be on the stream with non-GW models for obvious reasons. But I personally, I use third-party models all the time. I think they add a lot to the experience. I buy 3D printed models. I think they add to the experience and they're fun. I think it depends on what your goals are for your event, right? If you just want a big fun event, who cares, right? As long as it's very clear to the other player what the model is or should be, I think it only adds to the experience. But if that's not your goal, or perhaps you're a game store owner and it worries you, then you have to do what's in your best interest, right? And like, if you think it's going to hurt your business to have people come in and bring 3D printed models and play in your store and not buy anything from you, then feel free to do what's best for your business, right? So it just depends on what your goals are with your event.
Yeah,
totally agree. So I would like to switch over to actually the part what the show is called, the judges' call, and have a look at some rules. As you just mentioned, your favorite army is Imperial Guard. I don't want to call it the other name that's spooking around, because I'm a Guard player by myself. We would like to talk about a rules question that came up last year in Bremen. That was, as you mentioned before, a gamer who tried to game the system, and see what's your opinion about that. So we're looking at the Tank Ace rule from the Psychic Awakening book for Imperial Guard.
Yes.
And as you know, there's the tank ace rule, pretty much, where you can remove a warlord trait from your Imperial Guard warlord, and instead of that, give a vehicle, pretty much a character vehicle, a tank ace.
Mhm.
So you get one tank ace. Then you have a second option by using a stratagem to give another vehicle a tank ace. So you got two tank aces. Now there's the opportunity to use the Progeny of Conflict stratagem on an Militarum Tempestus character who was your warlord before, where you remove the tank ace already, give him a warlord trait, and remove it again with the Psychic Awakening general rule to give somebody a tank ace. So you can have like 3 tank aces. Do you think this is viable or eligible, or what's your opinion on that?
I don't know for sure, but then what I have learned working with Games Workshop on the FAQ is whenever it sounds like bullshit, 99% of the time it is. And this sounds like bullshit
That
to me.
sounded like bullshit to you?
Mhm.
Like the guys writing the rules, like never ever intend if it takes some like stretch of logic, and it's like connecting X to Z to Y to get to whatever. 99% of the time, that is not what
Yeah.
it meant.
Yeah.
And this certainly sounds like some bullshit to me.
Yeah.
So what I hear from that is you're more like the rules as intended guy than the rules as written guy.
100%. And it's almost always rules as intended is almost always correct, right? And again, everybody's like, oh, everyone has different intent.
Yes.
99% of the time, we all look at a rule and we're pretty sure what it meant, right? Like, and it's
Yeah.
usually the less powerful interpretation. It's usually the less ridiculous one.
Yes, that's very true. It's, just the thing with this is that it all takes place before the game begins, technically, and that's such a nebulous, like quote unquote, phase of the game because there are no rules for that phase. But there are things that say that you have to do it in that quote unquote phase. So there's this bunch of things that have no set. Like a set sequence in which it happens, which the other phases, pretty much all of them do. And so now, because there is no set sequence for things, you get to like just do them in the way that it's most advantageous to you. Like, okay, I strip away, like in this example, I strip away the warlord trait, but now I give it a warlord trait, but then I strip it away again. And I'm allowed to do this because there's nothing saying you can't do that. So
yeah, that's absurd, right? And
yeah.
like we built the ITC by saying no to this kind of dumb stuff, right? Like that is that is exactly what we did. When someone's like, yeah, but clearly if you read it this way, like like a robot, like absolutely every word is exactly what it says, you get to this preposterous conclusion that creates an unenjoyable experience.
Yeah.
And we just said no to that. And everybody, we got a lot of flack, and a lot of people told us they hated us and all this stuff. But then when we went and worked on the actual FAQs with GW, we were right 95% of the time. Right? Like, they're like, oh yeah, obviously that's what we meant. So I always encourage judges, like, do whatever you want. Like, if you're a rules is written person, like that's the way your brain works.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. And if you let everybody know coming in advance, like this is the way we are going to rule it, so that everybody knows.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah.
But I always try to encourage judges to feel empowered to tell people, like, we're going to go with what our gut tells us is correct with rules as intended. If you have a question in advance, ask. And don't feel like a slave to the exact verbiage of the rules.
Yeah. So in this specific example, you say, empower the judges. So in this example, you would actually rule it as, okay, you're doing this. This is bullshit. You've got 3 tanks with tank ace. That is not the intent. Strip one of the tanks of their tank ace special ability. That's how you would then handle this specific situation?
Yeah. So when we have our judge team, I always tell the judges, I was like, you're not here to be correct. You are here to give an impartial answer to the question and at the table.
Yes.
Like, try to be right, but you're not here to be right. You're here to resolve a conflict at the table, and that's it. So we always back the judge no matter what, even if he says Space Marines have a 6-up save. I'm like, that's the call for this game. Obviously that's absurd and that wouldn't happen, but we always back our judges first. Right?
Yes.
Because And we tell them like, go with your gut,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then another, if you're a TO, another good way to handle these kind of situations is that you put the onus of responsibility on the player, and you tell them, I can give you a fast, off the cuff answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
No guarantee that it's right, but I can resolve your conflict quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Or especially if you're using clocks, that's why this works so well.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, or on your time, I can go do
Good
research
one.
and ask the other judges and look it up.
That's actually
And now it's
like
on the
that.
player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Because if they're
really
like,
like
no, I've only got 5 minutes, I need an answer right now. Well, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
you just agreed
Yeah.
to go with this regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually an
I
excellent
really
tip.
like that.
Yes.
That's a very, very good solution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the players will always try and blame. Not like most players are very reasonable, but some players will try to go
Sure.
like, "Oh, this happened because of you." So it's like we always try to
Yeah.
remind or put players in a position to take responsibility for their situation.
You can't please everyone, and your first priority is just to make it a great, enjoyable experience for everyone there. So
Right. And if somebody's bending all these rules, it like inevitably every person they play walks away from it upset. And it's like that person is making everyone else's experience less enjoyable.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like this specific person, but generally speaking, the players that play that way, it like every person they touch at the event has less fun as a result of it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very good. I really like that. So we already had we had a preview last weekend, I think. Last weekend we had the preview for the new AdMech Codex. And it seems, because of the teaser for the new miniature, that orcs are next. What your thoughts? What your guesses? What's your wishes on the new dropping codexes, and what would you like to see next? I don't know if you really know it already. What's the order for the next codexes? But what would you like to see after the AdMech Codex?
So generally speaking, I think all the codexes that have come out tonight have been wonderful. They're thematic, they're powerful, they have options. So I'm really happy with the quality of them so far. The army I would like to see the most is Guard. And I would love if they updated the Catachan plastic infantry. Because the command squad is amazing, but the infantry squads are like one of the oldest multi-part plastic kits that's still in production.
That's why I go with the metal ones.
Yeah, they're clearly at higher quality for sure.
Yeah.
So Guard would be that, and then Tyranids. I would love to see Tyranids get an update because like half their units are really bad right now.
Yeah, it's true. They have very limited options. Like they can make a list that's that's pretty strong, but they don't have a lot of options. I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that statement.
Yeah. Man, I'm me personally. I'm waiting for orcs. I've always been an orc guy. I would love to see orcs. I don't think they're bad per se. Actually, they've won a tournament recently. I think there's even a Stompa list that has won a tournament recently. So there is some play there. I would just love to see, like, in general, I don't really want my codex like to be the most powerful thing, but I would like to see a codex that's, that can get along in the meta and has, which is a book that has, you basically, gives you all the options and you can't pick because they're all good or decent, So that would be like the ideal situation. And
I totally agree.
Yeah, and of course we've got Shop once again in the chat shouting. He's been shouting for an hour now that the Stompa has to go down to 500 points, and he's beseeching you, Reece, to do something about it.
I am no longer a playtester, so I apologize. There is nothing I can do anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I put my time in the trenches for 3 years, and that was it.
Actually, how was that being a playtester? How did you?
I don't want to be too honest about it because then people will be less likely to do.
Be as honest as you can.
No, it's it's wonderfully fulfilling, but it isn't a part-time job.
Okay. So what did you? Could you just like
serious commitment?
Yeah. Could you shortly explain what you had to do?
Oh, I can't go too much into it because of the NDA.
Okay.
But I can say that it's a lot. It's a serious commitment. It's like I don't know if you guys have this, but if you're if you coach a team, like a little league team or a football, right? Like you coach like a kid's football team, it's like that level of commitment,
Okay.
right? Like it's a major amount of time for no money, and
It's like being
it's
the CEO.
stressful.
It's like saying things like, "No, Timmy, you can't make the Stomper 1,000 points. That doesn't work."
Well, it's except for the difference is that Timmy can say, "Well, that is the way."
Yeah,
going to
it's
be,"
like,
and you're
"No,
"Okay."
Dad, you're not my real dad. You're my stepdad. I am gonna make that Stomper 1,000 points."
Yeah, and that's it, right?
Damn it.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent.
Oh my
and
God.
sometimes the feedback is taken and sometimes it's not, which is understandable, right? The game devs are in charge, and you are providing feedback.
If you're, could you? I don't know if you're able to answer this, but this is one thing I've always wondered: is there in their rules team? Is it like one team that makes all the codexes, or are there like separate teams for each faction? Is that something you could allude into, or no?
I can't go into too much detail, but I can say there's like an AOS team, a 40K team,
Okay,
et cetera.
I see. Because back in the day, I'm going to give it to you, Dan. Just one more question, because
Okay.
you know me, I'm very
just be the
curious.
fanboy.
Yeah, I have to gobble up all those little nuggets of wisdom that Reece can give me. So I was because back in the day, you had like one guy that did all the great codexes. Like I don't know what the guy's called again. He did the Eldar book and he did the Grey Knight books in like early editions. And
you had like Phil Kelly.
Yeah. And you knew that, okay, if this guy made the codex, it's going to be a good codex. And if this guy made the codex, it's going to be an enjoyable codex, but it's probably going to suck.
yeah. And like in the old days, as I understand it, it was just like one person sat down and did everything.
Yeah.
And, like wrote the lore, wrote the rules, and it was just kind of like whatever they thought was good was what you got. You know?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, now it's not like that now.
No.
There's teams of
Well,
people.
as I said, I'm super happy. I think the codexes are very well written and super balanced. I heard that the Drukhari codex is like you got a lot of choices and you can't pick which unit you want to take because there's so many good options. I hope all the other codex will like follow that way.
I really hope so. Yeah.
If you're thematic and powerful, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
So closing the interrogation here, what was your worst or strangest situation as a judge or as an event organizer at one of your events?
The most uncomfortable situation I've ever had as a judge, back when I did judge, I don't really judge that much anymore. It's more administration. But when I had said earlier that we don't go back in time anymore, we had a situation that caused us to make that ruling where our dear friend Jeff Robinson had a situation where a guy went back in time. Both players came up and they were like, "Oh, this thing happened. I actually won the game." And they both said, "Sure," but it caused quite a bit of a conflict, and so we went with it. And then afterwards, I was like, "Okay, we're never ever doing that again. That was terrible. That was stupid on our part."
You had your fun.
And then, but this is the part that makes it really awkward. The next year at the LVO, exact same situation, except this time, Jeff was the one that was saying, "Oh, we made a mistake. We need to go back and change it. I actually won." And we were like, "Remember that conversation we had last year where we decided never to go back in time again?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "What?" He's like, "So I get to suffer the downside of both of these?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm really sorry."
Yes, Jeff. That's what being having continuity means.
Exactly, right? Like, but it was just a bummer that it was like one of my best friends. I got the he was the cause of the change, and then he suffered the change.
Yeah, I mean, good old Jeff, man. That guy was the most entertaining guy in Warhammer 40K I ever did saw. That was
a true statement.
Yeah.
Can't add anything to that. So yeah, we're pretty much through my questions to my schedule or whatever you want to call it. I would say I don't know, Stefan. Did you grab any questions?
Oh yes, I did. You better believe I did. Yeah, you better believe I did. So you already asked the one question from Stefan, or rather from Facebook that we wanted to do, but we have some. Yeah, from Sebastian. There was one other question. So Cruel in chat wanted to ask, don't you miss sleeping on the Droopy and or Salty Bananas couch?
No. No, I don't. That was not. That was. I mean, it was fun in a sense, but it wasn't that fun.
I can imagine. Okay, and then the question was already asked, but I'm just gonna ask it again because I know he's very passionate about it. So the Stompa currently is way too many points. How many points would you make the Stompa?
I honestly can't answer that question. I haven't used a Stompa in a game, and
Okay.
I have one, and I can't even remember the last time I actually used it. So I'm sorry, I don't. But you know what? Whatever this person thinks it should be.
He thinks it should be 500 points. He's been campaigning, man. If he were in politics, he would be.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's the questions I had. I had one more question last week posted on Facebook from CJ asking who would win in a fight, Reece or Recio? No, excuse me. The question was, I'm reading another question. The question is, who would be a better judge, Reece or Recio?
Clearly Recio, because he doesn't give a crap about what anybody thinks. He would just be ruthless.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the questions I had from chat. So, yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, just want to give Reece the chance to place any plugs to, I don't know, anything you want to mention, anything upcoming, any new plans you have with the company?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show, guys, and thanks for the opportunity.
It's our pleasure.
To throw out a couple plugs.
Yeah.
So the Atlantic City Open is going to be. It looks like it's going to be the first event to come out of the plague, and that'll be in June in Atlantic City, New Jersey. For those of you in Europe who might not know exactly where that is, it's really close to New York, Philadelphia, Boston, all those Eastern Seaboard countries. It's a relatively no, it's Atlantic City, yeah, not Atlanta, Georgia, right? Yeah. So it's only about a 4.5-hour flight from London.
Yes.
For those of you, I know that the vaccine rollout's going a little bit slower over there, but for anybody that is able to go, we'd love to have you if it's possible. If it is possible to come, it's the closest event we run to Europe. And we're just really excited to be able to safely have an event, see everybody. Outside of that, really exciting. We are finally updating our webcart software to allow us to sell direct to European customers.
Awesome.
FLG Mats ITC Terrain. It's not quite done yet, but we are actively working on it, and that should be done in a month tops. We'll be ready to do that. So that'll be really exciting for people that have wanted to get our products that have had. It's been challenging to get our products in Europe previously.
Okay. Well, that sounds excellent, man. I hope that you get that ball rolling real quick. Yeah, that sounds great. So, yeah, we come at the end of our show. It's been a great show. We've really enjoyed having you. And there's always the one last question that we ask our guests. I'm gonna modify it a little bit just for you. So the question is, if Guardsman Reece were to fight against Cultist Recio, who would win, and what weapons would they use?
Well, Recio is a sneaky son of a gun, so I can't count him out. But with faith in the Emperor and a trusty lasgun, I think he'd go down.
Okay, and what would Recio be using?
I love that.
Well, he'd be using like the cultists don't get very good weapons. It'd probably be like a lug nut on a string, and maybe auto pistol.
Okay, well, it would definitely be a bloody fight. All right. Well, there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Alliance Opens Judges Call. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to Reece for being in our show. It was a blast talking to you, and really great to get some insider knowledge into how to be a great tournament organizer. For everybody at home watching this or listening this, if you enjoyed our show, consider following and or subscribing us. We would really enjoy and appreciate that fact. Also, don't forget to check out our alliancearmory.net, where we sell event tickets. You can stay up to date of our events there, get wargaming accessories, terrain, and all kinds of great stuff. To everybody in the chat, thanks for joining us. We love you all. And next time we are going to have another great guest. I am going to tease it a little bit with another Jeopardy-style question. This rugby Viking is well known for team tournament organization. So if people can guess who it is, let us know. Hit us up in the chat, and you might win something cool. And with that being said, we wish everybody good day, good morning, good night, whatever it is. Stay healthy, stay safe, and above all, stay wargaming. Bye, everybody.
Bye.